Congressman Harris, always great to see you. Let's start with this Elon Musk tweet storm or X storm, whatever the heck he's calling it now. Is that concerning to you and your colleagues, how he's framing this bill now?
Well, no, actually, my colleagues in the Freedom Caucus, we like the fact that he's talking about the potential effect of the big, beautiful bill on the budget deficit. We think we have to get the deficits under control. And the way the bill is structured, the spending is up front. The savings is in the last 5 years. That's pretty typical in Washington. And bringing that, again, to the Senate's attention, I think is important because we don't want the Senate to certainly roll back any of the spending reductions we have made, and hopefully they might add a couple more.
So are you happy with the current level of savings in the bill right now? I mean, you guys all voted for it. I would assume that you're, well, let's just put it this way. Why don't you tell me, what do you think of the current savings that are in the budget bill?
I think we didn't go as far as we could. You know, the president said we should attack waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid. There's still hundreds of billions of dollars left on the table of waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid. I understand the politics of it, though. This was pretty good in terms of deficit reduction, but I think we could have gone further, and I hope the Senate does.
So one of the things that the White House seems to be doing by sending up this, what they call a rescissions bill yesterday, is saying, hey, just because it's not in the bill doesn't mean you can't cut spending. So is it your goal or hope that there's additional spending cuts outside of the big, beautiful bill?
Well, I would hope that that's true, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, you know, there are people balking at a $9 billion rescission bill. Again, when the big, beautiful bill has $150 billion a year over 10 years spending reduction. So I'm not sure there's going to be that much spending reduction outside of this bill. Certainly, the first rescissions bill is low-hanging fruit. Obviously, USAID went way off the rails in terms of what they were funding around the world. And honestly, PBS and NPR should have been defunded a long time ago. There's no reason for federal taxpayer dollars to flow into those two entities. They can raise the money on their own, and there's plenty of other competition. There's no need, again, to tax American citizens to pay for PBS or NPR.
And I got to be honest with you. If this effort doesn't defund them, I don't know what will.
Nothing will. The bottom line is that we should have done this years ago. There's some people in rural areas say, well, but people still listen to that station. Okay, they can listen to that station. It just shouldn't be funded with taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, I'm with you on this. Like, I know I've said this over and over again on the show, and I ideologically, there's no question that there's a bias. But I am a more fundamentalist when it comes to the funding, and it sounds like you are too, which is I don't really care. If they suddenly started writing right-wing stories, I'd say this isn't a government function. We shouldn't be using taxpayer dollars to be in the news business or the so-called news business.
That's absolutely right. Look, 50 years ago, there might have been a reason when you didn't have a whole lot of radio stations, you didn't have a whole lot of TV stations. But now you pick up your smartphone, you can literally get 1,000 different radio stations, probably 1,000 different television stations. The bottom line is there's no need for the federal government intervention in the broadcast industry in PBS or NPR.
So the Congressional Budget Office put out some what they call baseline scenarios of the debt. Okay, so there's the deficit, which is what we spend more than we have yearly, and then that adds to the debt. Under like every scenario, even under the lowest scenario, the debt increases 116% between 2019 and 2032. How concerning is the debt to you and the members of the Freedom Caucus?
It's tremendously concerning. It's also concerning to objective traders in the bond market. The bottom line is that we have high mortgage rates. One of the reasons is right now is because people buying a house are competing with the federal government to borrow money. And when that competition occurs, interest rates go up. It's simple economics. The bottom line is until the federal government stops competing with businesses and individuals to borrow money, those interest rates will be high and it'll put a brake on the economy. So again, it's very important for us to get that federal deficit under control so the federal government doesn't have to borrow between $2 and $2.5 trillion over the next few years, each and every year.
So you guys passed the bill. It headed over to the Senate. I think to boil it down pretty simply, I'd say there's two kind of camps in the Senate. There's the sort of least Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, don't cut more. We're cutting too much camp. And then there's the Rand Paul, Rick Scott, Ron Johnson camp, which is we're not cutting spending enough or affecting the deficit. Which camp wins over there?
Well, I think, look, we had two camps in the House as well. We were able to pull the bill as far as I think we probably could have pulled the bill without, again, the more moderate wing of the party objecting. I think the Senate's going to have to realize they can't wander far off that mark. I'm hoping they wander a little bit more into deficit reduction. But if they wander in the other direction, it is not going to pass when it comes back to the House. There are several members who have said they voted yes to get it over to the Senate. But if it comes back with less deficit reduction, and that is particularly the Inflation Reduction Act and the Medicaid fraud, waste, and abuse, secondary to the Obamacare expansion, the bottom line is that those two programs, the IRA and Obamacare, are two programs that every Republican voted against, except for one. One voted for Obamacare, but every other Republican voted against it. Every Republican voted against the IRA. And now we're having trouble cutting those back. So it's again, I think it's where it needs to be now. If it moves, if it backslides, it's going to have problems in the House.
Do you think part of it is the reality? Meaning, when you vote against or for defunding Obamacare or whatever, and you kind of know in the back of your head it's never going to happen. For some of your colleagues, it's maybe an easy vote, but when they know that it's actually on the line, it's a lot tougher of a vote.
I think that's what's happened here. I mean, the bottom line is that the reforms we want to Medicaid, again, the fraud, waste, and abuse was rampant once Obamacare expanded it to young, healthy people and increased the subsidies way over the subsidies for pregnant women, disabled children. The bottom line is that this was a vote that was as we say, a live fire vote. I mean, this is the one. Yeah, if this passes, there will be those cuts to that Obamacare expansion, and they're well-deserved cuts. They're well-needed cuts, but they will exist.
So I put a chart out on social media, and it shows that under the Congressional Budget Office, this year, 2025, the federal government will spend $695 billion in Medicaid, okay? In 2034, under the House Reconciliation Bill, 2034, the federal government will spend $847 billion in Medicaid. Now, you're a doctor. You're a really smart guy. I didn't take math in college, admittedly. I'll be upfront about that. But I do know, and you don't have to be a doctor to know this and be as smart as Andy Harris, but I know that 847 is much bigger than 695. The question I have for you is that why are we allowing the discussion to be about the word cut? This is $847 billion in 2034 is more, a lot more, $152 billion or $53 billion more than the $695 billion that the Congress is allocating for Medicaid in this year. Like, what are we do? Why are we allowing ourselves to get brought into this conversation? We need to call out Democrats and say, you're stupid. You don't how is this less? Where's the cut show? The math is so simple. The charts and the graphs are so simple. And yet we're allowing the media and the Democrats to talk about cuts.
That's absolutely right. Look, we do cut waste, fraud, and abuse, but the American people want that cut. But we increase spending, but we're increasing spending in the underlying Medicaid program. And that's what we should talk about. We should talk about the fact that we are increasing spending 25% over the next 10 years. And everywhere except inside the Capital Beltway, that is actually considered not a cut. And I just had this discussion with a journalist. I said, look, journalists should be much more careful with their words. When you're increasing spending by 25% over the next 10 years, that is not a cut anywhere except in the Capital Beltway. But we are cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. And the American people want us to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, not only in Medicaid, but throughout the federal government.
100%. But I guess the question that I don't even understand is, to your point about the journalist, this is a graph, okay? 695, 847. Every Republican House member, heck, every Republican should be walking around with this chart and say, this is more, right? You're absolutely right. Washington is the only place where I can say, I have $5. I would like 10. And you'd say, hey, Sean, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you 8. And I go, Congressman, you just cut me $2, right? This is an insane mentality. And yet we whether it's with all due respect, I don't think they're journalists. If you can't figure out math, then you're not a journalist. You're a media personality for the left. We should just be walking around with this graph everywhere we're going and saying, this is how much we're increasing Medicaid. Full stop.
That's absolutely right. I've shown that graph on the House floor. I've actually given speeches on the House floor showing the graph, saying this is, and you're absolutely right. Every member should have that graph. They should put it all on their social media. The bottom line is we are cutting waste, fraud, and abuse and increasing Medicaid spending.
Yes, that's it. Full stop. And by the way, and I think that there's an additional comma, and the fight to root out waste and cut the deficit continues. Like, I think we need to tell people that this is happening. I started this conversation with you by talking about the Elon tweeting out a bunch of stuff. The president was on social media yesterday too, going after Rand Paul. And I got to say, I get that he's not happy that Rand's not on board, but I do appreciate Rand's tenacity in tackling and highlighting the debt, as you have done in the House.
That's absolutely right. And it's important that we remind our colleagues of that, because it is probably one of the most serious threats to the future of America right now is, in fact, our federal debt and a federal deficit and debt that are causing us to spend over $1 trillion a year in interest payments alone. That doesn't end well, and we have to turn our attention to it. The president has said he wants to balance the budget. I take him at his word. I think we should take every opportunity, and the first opportunity presenting itself is the reconciliation bill and the rescission bills.
Do you believe that I know a lot of people say, well, the CBO numbers are wrong, and I was the budget committee spokesman for 3 years. They're notoriously wrong. Do you believe, as some in the White House do, that actually this bill will result in a lower deficit?
It might, if we have growth above 3% over the 10-year period, which historically has just never occurred over a 10-year period. I think it occurred only once in the post-World War II era. The bottom line is we have to do more than just stabilize the deficit or slightly reduce it. We have to get on a path to a balanced budget. And that's a very different. That's very, very different. You know, we can argue now how many angels fit on the head of a pin about whether or not we're going to make slight reductions in the deficit. But when you're sitting at a $2 trillion deficit, you need way more than slight reductions over time, and we have to get on that path.
So totally agree with that, right? Then what are we doing? I feel like if it wasn't for Elon Musk, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. Like I get it. Ron Johnson talks about going back to pre-pandemic spending levels, which I agree with. Like, why are we not? It's like everyone goes, yeah, we need to get back to doing this. And somehow I actually, the one problem I have with the growth argument is I feel like it's an excuse to keep spending and not tackling some of the systemic problems in our federal budget.
That's absolutely right, because if you think about it, what the growth projections do is actually provide increased revenue. They don't decrease spending. They balance the budget by actually collecting more taxes from people. The bottom line is that's not what we should do. We have a spending problem, and every Republican will say we have a spending problem, not a taxation problem, and then they'll continue to support more spending.
Yeah. Well, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, was out on TV talking about what the president was articulating in this thing, social media post against Rand Paul. I want to play you what he had to say on it.
I'm a fiscal hawk, but I am also a realist. And the way to think about this is every $300 billion is 1% of GDP. And as the clip that you just said, or you just showed, where I said we didn't get here in a year, we're not going to get out of it in a year, that we have to bring this down gradually, because we want to do two things. We want to cut and constrain spending, and we want to grow the economy. And what Senator Paul is asking for or advocating for, I think, could cause a sudden stop in the economy. So, I'm a deficit hawk, but I'm also a realist.
You say it could cause a sudden stop. You're saying that this is too radical to flip the switch like this, to cut. I mean, he probably wants to cut, a trillion or a couple trillion, right? You say that would be too dramatic.
Well, Rob, a trillion would be 3% of GDP.
Yeah. And that would, what would that do? I mean, because he's, I think he's a pretty smart guy. I have him on the show a lot. What do you believe that would do?
Well, look, what's important here is our debt to GDP. Yeah. So that if we don't grow, then we won't grow the tax base, and we're not going to grow revenues. We're not going to grow the economy. So we inherited a mess, and we have to constrain spending, cut spending, and then grow our way out of this.
So, Congressman, the problem that I have with what Secretary Bassett is saying is it's almost like an academic argument. We can't cut this much. We can only do this. We need to get growth. I believe, like you and I were talking about with NPR and PBS, that we should just be going through the budget and saying, does this program work? Is it effective? Is it serving the American people well? Yes, no. Increase it, decrease it, cut it, eliminate it. It's like we're having this academic exercise over numbers and not saying, like, when I send money to the federal government, I love serving, living in this country. I've served this country. You've served this country. Like, we have to have a strong military. We have to have roads and bridges. I get that. But what I want to know is, are you looking at what I'm sending and saying, okay, hey, look, this program from 1922 really doesn't exist anymore. We don't look through DOD the way that we should to find spending. And I feel like that what Elon's team did through Doge was start to look under the hood and say, is this program making sense? Is it actually effective? And as opposed to going through an academic exercise and saying, let's just get 3% or 2%. It's not, to me, I get targets are good, but I guess the bigger issue to me is, why are we not doing this constantly?
That's right. We have to go line by line, item by item. But the other thing we have to do is to put some more responsibility for some programs on the states. And that is one major thing that the BBB does, which is in the food stamp program, which is now funded 100% by the federal government. States have no responsibility in funding. What that results in are states who don't care whether you're eligible to be on. They just want to put more people on it. Is we actually now said, well, states actually have to start paying a share of it. That's really important. And we should look throughout the federal budget, and where there is no real federal nexus for using federal tax dollars is asking the states to pay more of their share. And that's whether it's, through emergency management, whether it's roads, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's some of the aid programs. Look, the states should pick up more of it. They have balanced budget amendments. We don't. And that's the most important check on the progression of government and the progression of taxation is in the states. If they want to spend more, they got to raise taxes. And the bottom line is they will have tax revolts. We had it in Maryland 10 years ago when we elected Larry Hogan because of the taxes and fees of the former administration in Maryland. That's a break that the states have that the federal government unfortunately doesn't have.
Is there any red line for you? You mentioned you don't want the Senate to tinker it too much.
It cannot come back with fewer spending reductions, especially in the IRA and in the Medicaid waste, fraud, and abuse. If it comes back with again, a rollback of those spending reductions, I voted present the first time just to get it over to the Senate. I'll vote no this time.
And how many of your Freedom Caucus colleagues are in the same boat with you?
I suspect they're plenty enough to sink the bill if it comes back with a rollback of spending reductions.
And what about, President Trump needs this. I think politically you guys need this to get it done, to get the benefits of it into the economy. Frankly, otherwise people will get a tax increase. And so if the Senate tinkers with it, is there a concern that, hey, what's the argument look like that says, let's just get it done and we'll go cut later?
Well, when we were at the White House 2 weeks ago, I think we made it clear to the president that spending is our red line. And I think he has to make that clear to the Senate that they can't tinker with the spending reductions. They can't reduce them. They can't roll them back. Because if they do, it will be a problem in the House. And, we only get one crack at this. We got to get it right.
Congressman Dr. Andy Harris, leader of the Freedom Caucus, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.
Bet.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.